The facade of marital bliss preached to millions crumbled overnight. Take a seat and relax your back as we unveil the secret affair, but before then do us the honor to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more breaking investigations into faith and accountability. Doug Weiss, the evangelical world's go-to marriage counselor and sex therapist, stood exposed, not as a beacon of marital fidelity, but as a man who secretly divorced his wife while continuing to counsel desperate couples under false pretenses, only to rapidly pursue and marry a grieving television ministry widow, Joni Lamb. This isn't just gossip, it's a scandal ripping through the heart of the Daystar television network, exposing layers of deception, ignored warnings, and a narrative that reeks of manipulation. Doug Weiss's divorce from his wife of over 3 decades, Lisa Weiss, wasn't a quiet, mutual parting. Finalized in May 2022, it remained a closely guarded secret, a secret Weiss deliberately kept from the very people who trusted him most, his clients. For nearly 9 months, while his marriage lay in ruins, he stood before couples in crisis, dispensed advice on intimacy and commitment, and presented himself as someone successfully navigating the complexities of marriage. Imagine sitting across from a counselor pouring out your heartache, seeking wisdom to save your relationship, all while the counselor knew his own marriage had catastrophically failed mere months prior. This wasn't an oversight, it was a calculated deception. He operated his counseling center under the explicit or heavily implied pretense that his own marriage was a model worth emulating. The ethical breach is staggering. Trust is the cornerstone of therapy, especially marriage counseling. By concealing his divorce, Weiss fundamentally violated that trust. He deprived clients of the critical context needed to evaluate his advice and his own credibility. Was he projecting? Was his advice tinged with bitterness or rationalization? Clients who sought healing were unknowingly receiving counsel from a man whose own marital foundation had collapsed, a fact he chose to bury until the last possible moment. The secrecy wasn't just personal, it was professional malpractice, exploiting the vulnerability of those seeking help for the very wounds he himself was actively hiding. The timeline is jarring, raising profound questions about motive and respect. Doug Weiss finally broke his silence about his divorce, not out of professional ethics, but seemingly out of necessity, on February 8, 2023. This disclosure came almost a year after the divorce was finalized. Then, just 2 days later, on February 10, 2023, Joni Lamb, still deep in the raw grief of losing her husband and Daystar co-founder, Marcus Lamb, who had passed away only in November 2021, publicly announced her engagement to Weiss. The speed is breathtaking. Lisa Weiss's marriage ended officially in May 2022. Marcus Lamb died in November 2021. By February 2023, barely 15 months after Marcus's death and only 9 months after Doug's divorce, Joni was engaged to her late husband's marriage counselor. This wasn't just moving on, it felt like a headlong rush. It disregards the natural, complex process of grieving a decades-long partnership. For Joni, it meant transitioning from profound mourning to planning a new wedding in an astonishingly short window. For Doug, it meant leaping from the end of a 30-plus-year marriage straight into a new engagement within months. The proximity of Doug's forced disclosure and Joni's announcement fueled immediate and widespread suspicion. Was the divorce disclosure timed specifically to clear the way for the engagement announcement? Had a relationship been developing behind the scenes while Joni was still mourning and Doug was still technically married? The optics screamed impropriety, making the subsequent justifications ring hollow for many observers. It felt less like a godly union and more like a scandal waiting to erupt. The core of the scandal isn't just the remarriage, it's the profound betrayal of trust embedded in Doug Weiss's professional conduct during that hidden year. Picture the scene. A couple sits in Weiss's office, struggling. Perhaps their intimacy is broken, trust shattered by infidelity, communication completely stalled. They look to Dr. Doug Weiss, author of numerous books on marital healing, renowned speaker, the expert. He speaks with authority, drawing perhaps from experience or shared understanding of marital challenges. All the while, he knows his own marriage has ended. He knows he is divorced. This goes beyond mere omission, it's an active deception. He presented a facade. His entire professional persona was built on the premise of successful marital partnership, a premise that was utterly false during that period. How could advice on forgiveness, perseverance, or rebuilding trust land authentically from a man who had recently walked away from his own vows? Clients were paying for expertise rooted in a reality that no longer existed for the counselor. The ethical violation is monumental. Professional guidelines for therapists often emphasize transparency about significant life changes that could impact the therapeutic relationship or the therapist's objectivity. Weiss flagrantly ignored this. He allowed clients to believe in a competency, his own lived experience of a functioning marriage, that he did not possess at that time. It casts a long, dark shadow over the advice he gave during those months. Were his recommendations sincere, or were they colored by his own disillusionment, guilt, or justifications for his actions? The deception fundamentally poisoned the well of trust essential for effective therapy. Joni Lamb did not embark on this relationship in a vacuum. Alarm bells were ringing loudly, persistently, from those closest to her and respected spiritual authorities. Her own adult children, Jonathan, Rebecca, and their spouses, reportedly expressed deep reservations and cautioned her against pursuing a relationship with Doug Weiss. This is significant. These weren't distant relatives, but her immediate family, intimately aware of her grief and the dynamics of the ministry and the players involved. Their concerns stemmed from love and a desire to protect her and the legacy of their father and Daystar. Even more damning was the intervention of Pastor Rodney Howard-Browne, a known and respected figure within their circles. Howard-Browne didn't mince words. He reportedly visited Daystar in February 2023, after Joni's engagement but before the marriage, and delivered a stark, prophetic warning directly to her children and associates. Joni would be living in sin if she married Doug Weiss. He declared he would not return to Daystar as long as Weiss was married to Joni, framing his stance as a matter of biblical conviction. He further revealed unsettling details, claiming that Marcus Lamb himself had confided in him about the immense difficulty Doug Weiss had put the Lambs through during counseling after Marcus's past affair, suggesting Weiss possessed deeply sensitive, potentially damaging knowledge of their marital struggles. Despite these powerful, loving, and spiritually weighty cautions, from her own flesh and blood and a respected man of God, Joni Lamb chose to proceed. The decision to disregard such unified and passionate warnings from her inner circle and spiritual mentors became a pivotal moment, signaling a rupture not just in her personal life, but within the Daystar family and its broader support network. It transformed private concern into a very public crisis of judgment and spiritual authority. The justification offered by Doug Weiss, and seemingly accepted without scrutiny by Pastor Jimmy Evans who guided the new couple, was that Lisa Weiss had abandoned the marriage, thus providing biblical grounds for divorce. However, this claim unravels under examination and stands in direct contradiction to testimony from those close to Lisa. Denise Boggs, a longtime family friend and counselor who worked extensively with Lisa Weiss during the marital breakdown, paints a radically different picture. Boggs asserts that Lisa was not the abandoner, but the abandoned. Far from walking away, Lisa was reportedly begging him to stay and not leave her. This description is crucial. Abandonment typically implies one spouse willfully deserting the marriage, refusing reconciliation. Boggs' account suggests the opposite. Lisa was actively fighting for the marriage, desperate to save it, while Doug was the one determined to leave. Furthermore, Boggs explicitly stated that the term abandonment was never part of her counseling sessions with Lisa. It seemed to emerge later as a convenient, perhaps post hoc, theological justification. This directly challenges the narrative promoted by Weiss and accepted by Evans. It raises serious questions. Did Pastor Jimmy Evans, tasked with shepherding this new relationship, ever speak directly to Lisa Weiss to hear her side of the story before validating Doug's claim? Reports suggest he did not. Evans appears to have taken Doug's assertion at face value, failing in a basic pastoral duty to seek truth and understand all sides, particularly when such grave allegations, abandonment, are levied. The dissonance between Doug's claim and the testimony of Lisa's counselor reveals a critical inconsistency at the heart of the scandal, a manufactured justification for divorce that doesn't withstand scrutiny, enabled by a lack of due diligence from spiritual leadership. If you're invested in truth and accountability, like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel now. We're just getting started.